started working at TCS. I'm quite sure that all of you know that TCS, if you bought a burger or you bought a car, they have something to do with it. In regards to that, in India, they have probably, I don't know, 50,000 employees in India. Um, they have had pretty much every contract from Oregon to Pensacola when it comes to information technology contracts. A big managed service company. So I worked there doing executive support as an EUC analyst as well, working with their Convault project. Um, then eventually I became a system administrator at Syntax. So I worked there, about 2.5+ years, doing, incident management, working with knock alerts, pretty much like the first line support with Citrix administration. That was my first time learning about XenApp and virtualization concepts in regard to, patching security uh, patches and pushing out updates for those Citrix XenApp servers. After that, now what happened in my career was very interesting. While I was a Citrix administrator, I went to go speak at Metro State University for some students on Saturdays. They just wanted me to just come in and just show the kids that you could get into IT. They wanted somebody where they said there's folks that look like me that are actually in IT, and they said show them a lot of different technology, which I did. There was supposed to be an instructor for the Microsoft Imagine Academy. He didn't show up. So the next time I got called, I went and this is all while I was a Citrix administrator. This was all on the weekend. So I would go get my sugar-free iced coffee from McDonald's and be on my way down Energy Park Road. And so I came the next week. The instructor didn't show up again. And then I came the next week and he still didn't show up. So they said, "Hey, do you want to be an instructor?" I said, "Well, I'm really not much of an instructor." They said, "Well, they seem to think you are." So I started instructing the Microsoft Imaginary Academy class. I started bringing in people that I knew that worked at Splunk. I had some friends that I got jobs that owed me a favor. They were Cisco engineers. So I said, "Well, I don't know a lot about routing and switching. I want you to do a demonstration." So I did that about a year, and then the Osiris organization heard about me, and he said, "Could you create a curriculum for the Microsoft Technology, the 98 366 exam?" And I said, "I'm not an instructor." And they said, "Well, you seem to be doing it." So he said, "Can you create something for adults?" And so I did. 7 years later, working with Tech Systems, the Microsoft Data Center, I got 300 Black folks certified and employed in information technology. So I had been doing this all during the time that I had been working. Um, they heard Hiawatha Academies heard the work I was doing in the community, so they said, "Can you come over and be a Salesforce administrator for this charter school?" So I decided to take a crack at it. I was there about a year and a half. Um, January 2020, early on, they told everybody that half the staff is going to be laid off. So I ended up going over at Flywheel, which was a startup company. If you guys are familiar with DICOM concepts, PAX, basically, if you ever had the unfortunate situation to have an MRI, what that company does is they could run artificial intelligence to get data from X-rays. So that was my first introduction into DevOps. Uh, Working with doing merge requests with Terraform and things of that nature, and kind of being like the frontline support for that. So let's say you get an MRI and it's an image where you have like a broken collarbone. Some of the universities that use and doctors that use the program, they could run what they call gears. And what that does is that looks at certain algorithms, and you could upload the data and you can save lives a lot easier. Um, I was laid off from there, and I eventually started working at Wells Fargo for the API Gateway support team. So, if you buy a cheeseburger or you buy the Trump Towers, you probably have something to do with APIs, as we all know. So, uh, the Gateway team was basically a startup within Wells Fargo where we worked with a lot of the software developers that were implementing APIs. That was my first time really using Splunk for logging. We would look at the errors of a payment that went incorrect, and then we would pretty much open up a ticket in Jira, and then we would work with the developers and the implementation and onboarding team to make sure that they had their correct permissions in what's that program? Apogee. Um, it might be an issue where they didn't include the correct Python script. maybe their public key infrastructure wasn't correct. They might have not saved their private key somewhere. So we were doing trouble, the first line of troubleshoot ticketing for that. Um, that position went on from about December 2021 to August 2023, and then I started working at Optum United Health Group. I was kind of It was kind of a lead role where we were working with Insomnia and Postman. Um, if anybody has anybody in the room had my chart before? Well,
Yep.
Optum bought my chart. Well, they're equivalent to my chart, and our role was to kind of stand it up, basically be the back end support where we look at Insomnia or Postman to see if there's any errors, and then we open up a task and service now. Every day my job was to run reports for ServiceNow. They called it Snow at that time, and pretty much divvy act as a team lead to kind of divvy out the tickets. So with Wells Fargo, we worked in an agile environment. Optum was also an agile environment as well. Flywheel was also an agile environment. So that was my introduction to that. Um, to this day, I still do some work in the community of getting people jobs. I think I got 5 people hired, and I don't do the training anymore. One of my students that was in the class, what they ended up doing was they wanted to take the class over. I was tired, so after 7 years, she took over the class. She was a lot smarter than me, and then I helped create an Azure class, and that's pretty much my story. IT person, praying mantis enthusiast.
Sounds like you've got quite the diverse experience and touching a little bit of every aspect of it. So thank you very much for sharing all that.
Most
Appreciate it.
obliged. Most obliged.
Um, so what we'll do now is I will kind of go around circle between myself, Doug, Alex, Ricardo, Joe, Mark. Feel free to chime in if you guys have questions that pop up. But looking for some general kind of personality questions, general thinking questions, getting to know you a little better. Doug and Ricardo will be kind of chiming in a little bit more on some technical stuff just to kind of get your thought process with troubleshooting. I'm more so looking for the process in which you're taking to get the understanding for it. So you don't need to go super technical,
Okay.
but if you do have that technical ability within you, feel free to let it show, and kind of walk us through that thought process as well. So,
Okay.
all right. First and foremost, I'll give you a softball one here. What kind of work do you prefer? Are you a repetitive work kind of person? Do you like things popping up spontaneously? Do you like things planned out well in advance? What kind of work do you like doing?
I can shift to a wide diversity of different work. Being in a lot of different positions in which we had to focus a lot on change management. Things could kind of happen on the fly. I've worked with small and large environments, so I'm able to work independently and get the ball rolling, and I'm also able to take direction as well. um, so I like things to change. I'm one of these Game of Thrones guys. I kind of like to see Jon Snow go in the different directions. I don't like necessarily staying in the same place. I can do things that's repetitive, but I can do things on the fly as well. That's actually one thing that kind of helped me when I was, a technical trainer, in which you had some people that were not technical at all. I had people that were coming in that were janitors. I had people that had master degrees that couldn't find work. So I was able to modify my language in order to fit somebody that needs a little bit more help than someone that might not need so much help.
Appreciate the answer on that one. All right. Do you mind talking a little bit about the kind of people you like working with? Do you like collaborating with people? Do you like being more independent on your own to accomplish tasks?
I do like collaborating with people. I have worked independently on some positions. When I was at AIG, I worked mostly independently, but I kind of led the team. So a lot of times I was doing like data reporting and working with the PMs at Dell and things of that nature. Um, but I like working in a ego free environment, an environment in which people have a sense of humor.
Hmm. Appreciate that. All right. I got one more and then I'll pass it over to somebody else here. Um, how do you deal with stress specifically? Say you had a big major incident, everything's down at one of your previous companies. How do you go about kind of handling those stressful situations? What do you do to maintain effective communications to everybody?
Sometimes if it's really stressful and it's during my lunch break, I might go take a walk. We got a farm right around the house, so I tend to do that every day. Sometimes you just gotta kind of peel back and look at the layers of things. It might be something you might have to set down for a few minutes and then kind of come back up and look at the puzzle. Um, in terms of communication, I was a big Slack person, especially when I was implementing my class. You know, I started having everybody use Slack because I was kind of just sending emails to people and stuff. So, I'm a person that likes to kind of keep a breath and let people know what's going on rather than just, if it's a problem, I'd rather let people know that something's going on or if I need help versus just to say, well, I don't know. And then I'm just sitting there and I wasn't the kid in class that was afraid to raise my hand. It
Mhm.
kind of annoyed the other kids, but I mean, I wanted to know. I didn't like not knowing. So I guess that would probably be the best answer for that.
So you'd say it's probably fair that you'd rather know the information, or if you're confused, you're going to ask the questions, you know,
Yes, sir.
that kind of thing. Okay. Why don't I pass this on over to Doug if you want to go ahead and work through some questions? You are on mute.
There we go. Can you hear me now?
We can.
Okay. Well, sorry about this first question, Derek. This is going to be the softball of all softballs. After hearing some of your experience here, um, so here goes. Your mom's computer cannot reach the internet, and she's asked you for help. You're on a hold with support, but they've indicated a long wait. What sort of things might you try to troubleshoot while you're waiting?
Okay, so you're saying her computer, she called up for her computer, needing some help. You said, and it can't reach the internet.
Yep. And you're on hold with whatever support you want, be it ISP, the computer vendor, whatever. Just you decide to reach out for help, but
Okay,
you're
and
waiting. So what sort of things are you going to do while you're waiting?
I'm local physically in with the computer. Um,
Absolutely.
Well, the first thing is I'm going to go to layer one. I'm going to go to
Okay.
layer one and I'm going to physically check and make sure that that cord is plugged up. That's number one. Um,
Okay.
if if it's an amber light and I'm still on the line, um, I'm probably going to go to CMD IP config all. Uh, if for some reason it's not getting, I'm going to ping google.com. That's the first thing I'm going to do with IP config. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to, try to get an APIPA address. I'm going to see if that address is even getting a, um, uh, is it even getting a connection from the DHCP server? I could try
Okay.
trace route. That's one of the things I could see. Is it getting any hops to the server at all? Uh, I could check the firewall. A lot of times, the firewall might block things with the ISP. I've seen that before. Um, Trying to think of some other things that I can do. There's been times where you know, when I started off earlier in my career, I would actually go to some people's houses. So let me try to simulate that. I will reboot the computer itself. Sometimes I will
Okay.
reboot the computer if possible. If it's a situation where it can be rebooted and they're not feeling like, well, hey, I'm working on a Word document. Are they working on something currently, or can the could the computer be rebooted? So I would do that as well.
Okay. Thank you. Um, okay. We're going to get into a couple of questions that are a little more philosophical. So I'm thinking again, we're looking for thought process here.
Okay.
So which do you prefer, perfect or good enough? And how do you strike a balance when needed?
Could you repeat the last part about balance again?
How do you strike a balance when needed?
Well, I know that we're not all perfect beings, but what I do know is that we can give our best and we can give a little bit more. Um, Best sometimes is subjective, but now if it comes to metrics and numbers, numbers are not subjective. Um, I think that people should try to do the best job that they can, and if they can't do the best that they can, we have to ask the question as to why. Is it because they don't have the ambition, or is it because they don't have the tools? A lot of times, most of the time, they don't have the tools. Now, if they have the tools and they still can't get it done, is it a situation where they incapable of learning it? I don't believe anyone's incapable of learning it. So I think that work and to me, work is like a craft. If you keep sharpening your blade, like the blacksmiths had the best swords in Game of Thrones because they had some top-notch people. They just kept working and working at it. So, that's when it comes to striving for perfection. That's kind of my idea on that. I would say steel sharpen steel. Um, Other men that are bright and the best sharpen other men that are the bright and the best. So, that's my thought process on that.
Okay. So let me the next question's a little vague, so let me give you kind of a little bit of a situation to apply this to. You're working with a Grafana dashboard and you can see the underlying data. Okay. And we're going to throw privacy out the window for a minute here. Privacy and all the cybersecurity compliance rules, just throw those out the window for a moment. You've got a big spreadsheet where you can see a lot of personally identifiable information, names, addresses, telephone numbers, social security numbers, things of that nature. But you're looking at it, you see missing data, you see like for example, maybe a zip code that obviously isn't right. I think most of your zip codes in Minnesota begin with 5, and you get one that begins with 7 or 8,
Mhm.
and some things like that. So, how do you handle imperfect data from an operational standpoint, and then also from a mental standpoint?
Well, from the operational standpoint, I could give you an idea. When I was working at the charter schools, Hiawatha Academies, it was very important that the correct data was there because it was running out of a Salesforce instance. This was a data-driven organization in which Tableau, all of your information, when people look at it, from parents to students to stakeholders, um, they would assume that the data is correct. Now, most of the time it was, but you got Salesforce, you got Infinite Campus, you have all these third-party applications. It's all feeding that data. Um, if the data is not correct, it's going to paint a picture um, to people that either someone's lying about the data, or it could, for example, it could say something like, well, these kids in Minneapolis are all getting school lunch, or they're getting the tools they need, or something like that. If the data is not correct on the back end, that could actually be some devastating things when it comes to funding and kids getting what they need. You know, uh, so there was some quality control checks, I believe, that was built into Salesforce, where you can go back and re-verify the data. You can actually look at I forgot what it's called, but there's like a reporting system that's kind of separate and apart from Infinite Campus that reports to the state government. That has to go through Infinite Campus, but you can verify that data. Um, if you load the data incorrectly, there's a way to go back in there and put it in, but there's data that's reported from the state that you can import into Infinite Campus, and it could quote unquote fix it. Hopefully, I was able to kind of explain that, decent.
Yeah, what about the mental side of it? because I don't know. I think that I think I know I do. I think other people get kind of mentally wary of having to question the data every time you turn around if you're consistently getting bad data. So how do you handle that from a mental standpoint?
Far as like me, like if I'm looking
Yeah.
at the if I'm getting bad data,
Yeah,
sometimes
if you're like consistently getting bad data, how do you handle that to try to reconcile it a little bit in your own head?
um I will be honest. There's some data and there's some information that I've seen when I was working with because I was operating as like the Salesforce admin and the data analyst there, um, and there has been some alarming data where I was kind of like, okay, this is not good. Um, I would do my best to try to get the correct source and try to see if I could, get it in the system. But yeah, there has been some times where I felt kind of wary about it, where I was just like, well, this not just the data was incorrect, but there was some information about the data that I saw that was alarming. So that did kind of bother me.
Okay. Okay. And then one last question here. So again, I'm looking for thought process here.
Okay.
You're playing a game online, and you have to guess where you are. And we'll just say that you're somewhere in the U.S. Okay, don't worry about anything foreign. Okay. The closer you guess to your actual starting point, the more points you get. You're in Google Street View and can move around. That's on one part of the window. Then another part of the window is basically you're out in space and you can zero in to guess where you actually are. Okay.
Mhm.
So being only able to look at what's around you, at least on the one side, but you can walk, you can walk it through Google Street View. Um, Describe your thought process to identify your location.
Um. Well, one thing I do, I'll give you an example. Uh, I was driving in Woodbury and I kind of got lost and I really didn't know where. I go for landmarks. Another question is, do I have a compass?
Do you have a what?
Do I have a compass?
Oh, a
Uh,
compass.
yeah, I'm just going in the thought process like, am I allowed a compass in that situation?
Oh, I think there is a compass on the page. Yeah.
Okay. Um, I would look at maybe landmarks and um, am I allowed to add another address or no?
Not on that page, but if you wanted to, I mean, we'll just say for the sake of fun, you do have multiple monitors, so you can open up anything else you want on another monitor.
Okay, okay. So I just want to make sure that I had that option. Yeah, I'd open up another
Yeah, you're allowed to
page.
cheat.
Uh, yeah, if I'm allowed to, and not, I wasn't just gonna necessarily open up for Google Maps. Um, I can I could actually, if I could just Google the address, if I could just Google the cross section, you know, if I could Google the cross section, um, Google
Keep in
tends
mind that you might be really rural too.
to really rural.
Yeah.
Um, how do I have to? Am I getting? Do I have to be exact? Do I have to know exactly where I'm at? Because see, now that you're thinking about my thought process, I'm going to think even deeper than this. What kind of birds live in that region?
Okay.
See, I'm
And
now
you may not be able to see birds.
I may not be able to see birds.
Yeah.
Okay.
Think about Street View.
Um, maybe I can. Maybe I could. Okay, I was thinking of maybe the power lines or something like that, or Now I was thinking about maybe I can Google, maybe I can maybe on one of the power lines or something there might be a sign or something that says, hey, this is, let's say it's not Excel, but let's just say there's a sign or a piece of paper or something where a company will say this is Smoke Joe's Electric Company, and I could just Google that name of the electric company and then figure, well, okay, well they're way out in who knows where, Minnesota.
Okay.
I'm trying to think of some other ways where I could figure it out.
Yeah. We probably need to move on here in a minute, but sorry, we're just I want to give the other guys a chance too.
Okay.
Ricardo, do you want to go next? Or
Yes,
Doug, do you have anything? Sorry.
Oh, no worries. You were saying, Dylan?
Oh,
Doug,
no,
did you?
no, I just want, if you had, Derek, if you had any last thoughts real quick on that, let's go ahead and, I'm sorry, it's not you. I just want to make sure we're conscious of time.
Okay. Yeah, I don't have much that pops in my head, besides you said there's no birds in the area. Um,
Or at least you can't see him.
Maybe I could think about maybe what is the average temperature in that area. I mean, maybe I could look that up and say, well, maybe I'm in this region. It may not tell me exactly where I'm at. Um, if I'm in the middle of nowhere and there's just nobody at all, the next question is how dangerous is this situation? I might have a flare. I might be able to
Yeah.
throw a flare up and let people know where I'm at. Those variables weren't explained, whether or not am I just lost, or is it a situation where I really need to to get where I need to be, and it's kind of like the Last of Us, End of the World. I really need someone to help. I throw a flare up. I might be able to get some location from that. Um, I can't think of anything else that I'd be able to do at that point.
Okay, that's fine. Let's go ahead and move on.
Okay.
All right. So, Derek, I kind of wanted to get a idea of your working style, but also dig a little bit more into your experience.
Okay.
So, my first question is, if you're faced with a hurdle in a project or task, how do you typically overcome it?
Typically what I do is I ask questions. Um, you know, um, IT in general and life in general is about questions and answers. So, if it's a hurdle, what is the priorities of this hurdle? Is there a big service level agreement in this hurdle? How many users is it affecting? Is this a process hurdle or is this a actual technical hurdle? It could be a hurdle where it could be a creative hurdle where people say, well, I haven't made the decision in order to get somebody else to make a decision about this. um, if it's something that's a physical hurdle where somebody says, well, you got two people out from this project, but you're there, we need you to kind of work a couple more hours to kind of get this resolved. um, it all depends on what it may be.
Okay. So, my next question is, what is your approach when you're encountering something new to you on the job, whether it be a new technology or a new process?
Yeah, I'm a big Google person, a big question person. I might ask somebody for a sandbox. I like to play around with stuff like that, virtual machines. That's kind of how I learned Salesforce a little bit. Um, I always like to reflect back on my technical training because that was a big part of my career because I was actually training people and showing them, and I actually have a presentation. It's like 2 minutes. I'd like to show you guys about that. But anyway, that providing information to people, um, a lot of times they may not get it right away. And so, I'm a tacit learner. So there was a lot of times where, I would have a class where they're talking about where we're getting them certified for this Microsoft certification. And we initially had the book. I told everybody to take the book and put it in a bucket. And they're like, well, hey, how are we going to study? I said, You're not a student anymore. You're an IT professional. I set up Spiceworks for ticketing system. I set up Microsoft Data Tours. I did resume crafting. I brought in Robert Half and Tech Systems and Splunk and different field trips and stuff. I said I'm going to show you guys better than I could tell you. I said now we're going to go open the book back halfway through the class, and then we have AWS for virtual machines and stuff like that. So I had to learn all of these ideas on how to implement new process and procedures um, to resolve. Somebody might have a question. Okay, how does a firewall work? Well, we're not going to look up firewalls. We're going to we're going to download pfSense, do a Linux firewall. So that's how I would do that.
Okay. My next question is, I want to delve a little deeper into your actual experience. So I wanted to get you to kind of describe your experience with monitoring tools, what you've typically used.
Okay. And I did want to be very candid, so I talked to the account manager about that. When I was at Flywheel, that was my first time using Grafana. And I'll be honest, I really didn't create any dashboards. So I don't have 3 years of experience with it. I want to be very clear about that. We would look at the Grafana tool from, for example, we would have what they call these run books. That was my first introduction to Docker and Kubernetes. And for example, if you have a pod that goes down, you could say something like KC Git pods or kubectl, Git pods, and if a pod goes down, Grafana what it would do is it would show that the pod went down, and then you would have something called Prometheus, in which it might give you a run book. It would fire off these alerts. So, in terms of monitoring, I would have the dashboard where I could look at some of these nodes that went offline. In the same way, when I was at Optum, we would have Grafana as the dashboard where we can monitor if a pod went down, or if some of the servers were having issues, if a server was overutilized. We also had a monitoring tool when I was at Wells Fargo and Optum, where it was a monitoring tool for any of the APIs that went down. So sometimes I would have to get on an after hours call for an API. It might be well, I can say it now, but API PayPal. One of those APIs went down, so I would open up a bridge. I would get everybody. I would reach out in ServiceNow, and I would open up it would be like a level 1. It might be a level 1 gold member or whatnot. So I could open up that a change management ticket, and then kind of create some tasks around that and get everybody on the bridge on Microsoft Teams to discuss what API went down. And there will be dashboards where we could add different servers, and that would populate in ServiceNow as well. So I would say maybe about a year. I would say about a year or so, a year and a half or so. Well, no, two, maybe 2.5, 1.5, 2.5 for monitoring.
All right, sounds good. My next question is kind of getting an idea of your thought process, and I'll just go right into it. So, a user's trying to connect to an SFTP server. They're telling you it's not working when they try to connect, but they're really not giving much detail. How would you go about troubleshooting this, and what would you search for?
The first thing I would want to know is if they're familiar with these terms, is port 25 ruled out by the firewall? Now they may say, well, I don't know what a firewall is. So a lot of times, I use like TeamViewer or primarily like Zoom sessions and stuff to troubleshoot. So if they just don't know what a firewall is and don't know where to go, I would try to see if their system administrator is available. If he's not available, I would try to see if they have if they have Exchange or some kind of an email client or whatnot that I can remote in and take a look at that. But the first thing I would start thinking is that port available?
Okay, thank you. That's it for me. I guess, Dylan, if we want to move to the next. Move to Alex, I guess.
Yeah, Alex, go ahead and take it away.
Okey-doke. So So, Derek, what about this position like appealed to you that made you want to apply for it?
Well, um, I've had, some experience in DevOps, and when the recruiter had reached out, she saw me on LinkedIn, and when the recruiter reached out and says, "Well, hey, you've had experience with API, I have a company that you might want to take a look at." And so I said, "Okay, can you tell me a little bit more about, the position?" And she gave me the description of the position. And when I looked up the company, I seen that you guys had a pretty good stronghold of experience, in marketing, and so when I dug a little deeper and I said, "Oh, this is the old Olson company." I said, "Okay." I said, "Okay, well, you guys, you have a proven track record of success and branding and things of that nature." And you know, I thought that with my experience, it was worth having a conversation. Looking at the description, and um, I wanted to know more about the role, and that's how we got here.
Okay. And then when we train you, well, obviously we'll be giving you instructions on guidance on how we typically have done tasks in the past. How do you balance that between uh, kind of improving the process? So where's the line between doing things how you're trained versus trying to improve the process?
I'm a team player. If I see something that I think that would help the overall team, I have no ego to inflate. I'm definitely willing to speak up and say, well, you know, you know, this seems to be working pretty well, but have we looked at this? Um, I'm definitely not trying to be a hero. Um, but if there's something that can be improved, I would definitely document that. Um, I could actually give you an example. I'll pull this one out the hat. When I was at Blue Cross Blue Shield, they were having a lot of SCCM issues. They ended up having to lay off like 20 people in like 1 week. This was probably around 2012, right before I ended up at Travelers Insurance. Blue Cross Blue Shield, uh, they were having issues with deploying the computers and then making sure that the users had, because you had some people that were on XP, and with them going over to 7, some of them were losing their mind. You know how it is. They don't know how to find stuff. And so I decided to create a one pager. Nobody really was thinking about it at that time. I guess they pretty much was just going to hand the computer to the users and say, "Hey, well, you got a new computer, be happy." But I noticed that even though I wasn't, they had like what they call a first response team. They worked from the morning, and I worked second shift, but they worked from like the morning, from like 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. And they were getting a lot of we were getting a lot of tickets. The tickets didn't weren't supposed to go to us, but we were getting a lot of tickets and questions in our emails saying, "Hey, you deployed this computer, you messed up my computer." Well, the first response team is supposed to handle those questions. I said, "You know what if I create a one pager?" And then there were some other things in the command line that I found out that you can use. So I started kind of showing that to uh, the first response team, and that cut back, a lot of questions and emails by at least like 70%, like the first 3 weeks. And it was just pretty much a simple screenshot, and that was a process that they implemented.
Cool. Next question. So at what point in a task where you find yourself unable to complete it or you just need further guidance on it, at what point do you reach out for that further assistance? And who is the kind of person that you would reach out to?
I would probably reach out to the person that trained me in, or the first line of tech support. I would see if we have a knowledge base. I'm not exactly sure, uh, what kind of knowledge base you guys have, whether it's run books, in Docker and Kubernetes or whatnot, or if it's just just an internal knowledge base. I would try to Google it. I have been in some environments where they told us you can't Google nothing. You have to do everything out of the internal knowledge base, and sometimes the knowledge base sends you to Google. But yeah, I've seen stuff crazy like that too. But um, I would probably try to bounce it off of the team. There's been some times where even in Slack and Teams, there's been resolutions and fixes to tickets where you could actually like I've been a big person to like just type in the issue in Teams at the top of the taskbar and just see if somebody was talking about it, and then sometimes I found information in there, and that might have been enough.
So at what point do you decide I need to look for further guidance? Like, how is there like a time limit? Is there like
um
you
if
just
I'm not
aware this? I'm not aware of how to do this currently. I need to get more information or guidance.
If I don't know, and if it's something it's kind of time sensitive, I mean, I'm probably gonna reach out pretty quick. I don't want
Okay.
to. I don't want it to be hours and hours and be that with that fear where well, I don't know it, and I don't want to ask anybody, and I feel lower because if I ask somebody. No, I'd rather just ask.
Okay. And my last question. So this is a 24/7 position. There's a segment of it where that we are 20 on call 24/7. Do you do anything different if an incident happens, say at 2 versus 2 p.m.? Do you work a little harder not to wake anyone up, or are you still willing to kind of reach out to the people that need to be brought in as quick as possible?
I'm willing to do that. Actually, when I was at Flywheel, we had something kind of like that. When I spoke more so about the pods, when the pod went down, after like 15 minutes, we would receive an alert. And then, most of the time I would be at home, but, we had to bring our laptops with us if we were on call. So if I'm at the park with my son or something like that, I could just tether in and remote in if need be. Um, and there's been some times like it'll be me, it'll be a tier two, and then maybe a platform engineer. I can follow the run book up to a certain extent. I could try to restart the pods, but it might be. I know you guys are familiar with SQL Server, but what's that other database? Somebody help me out. It's Mongo. MongoDB. I'm not a MongoDB admin. Sometimes a MongoDB admin would have to be contacted because the platform engineer may not have had, they tried everything they could in the run book, but remember what I talked about with those MRIs uh in that software as a service. The back end, it speaks to MongoDB. So they might need a MongoDB admin to remove something from the gears in order to to push that application to move forward so it can um, gather the DICOMs and the MRIs as it should. So I am familiar with a pager duty process.
Is there any process difference between a 2 a.m. call and a 2 p.m. call, like incident? Do you do anything different?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Now sometimes you might have a 2 p.m. call. Let's say it's a platinum partner. Let's say they paid for immediate service within 2 hours. It all depends on what the service level agreement is. But if it's a 2 a.m. call, um, then I'm going to try to wrap, everybody in the call that needs to be there if need be. Because I know at 2 a.m. Uh, something something went down that was very serious. If it happened at 2 a.m. 9 times out of 10, if it required a pager duty call, then I know that something has occurred that's very serious. I'm assuming that's a severity one, a Sev one.
No, that's all I have.
I had just kind of one other lingering question here that kind of caught my ear. You said you did some like Azure classes and stuff like that with your time for Hiawatha Academies. Do you have any cloud experience or familiarity with any of the flavors of cloud?
Well, when it comes to the Azure and the AWS, that was something that I added on top of the certification for the Microsoft Technology Associate Certification class that I created. Um, that wasn't with Hiawatha Academies. That was actually just something that I started working with. When it came to when it comes to cloud in general, I haven't done any full scale design, but creating virtual machines and getting Network Watcher to talk to it and everything. Um, that is primarily where a lot of my cloud comes from.
Kind of dipping your toes in it and getting
Yeah.
familiar with it. Okay.
Yeah, and I'm actually right now I'm working on my Cisco CCNA as well. So I'm in a class for that as we speak. Um, actually, I had a I wasn't sure how much time we had, but I actually had a I was going to show you guys one of the instances of the training that I did. I had a PowerPoint presentation in which I had the class uh, focus on an Azure project. Yeah, it was just like a quick PowerPoint. So my cloud
Well,
experience
I
comes
wanted
from.
to.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say we got about 10 minutes left. It
Okay,
looks like, and I wanted to give you the opportunity to chime in with any questions or anything like that
absolutely,
that you
absolutely.
had. So
Okay, all right. So in regards to, I seen that you got Grafana, App Dynamics, Splunk, Elastic, CloudWatch. Um, is this kind of the extent of the tools and the techniques that you use, or is it going to be kind of a mixture?
yeah, so we use each one of those as primary and secondaries for monitoring and reviewing. And each of those have alerts. So, if for whatever reason, like Grafana isn't working, we can go back through and kind of look at some of the other tooling that we have, like Splunk, and look and make sure, hey, is this maybe a Grafana issue? Or, can I verify, hey, Splunk is also seeing the same problems that Grafana is alerting on? So we use kind of all of them in conjunction with each other. There's like Apps Dynamics is heavily focused around the database and gives everybody a little bit more insight. Now, our database administrators, they have their own specific tooling that they use to actually go in and review and look at things. But from like a quick insight and understanding, like, hey, where some issues are and stuff like that, that's one of the primary tools we use.
Okay. Um, is there any like network congestions or performance issues, or where I would have to look at any configuration of routers, switches, or just mainly seams?
Yeah,
That's uh,
so
that's actually that's actually in my neck of the woods, and we have our issues, but we typically run pretty good. Um, Certainly, if you had some insight into a problem where that would be where some networking knowledge would be beneficial, certainly we would welcome that. But it's probably not going to be like a super prime focus of the job.
Okay, okay. Can you speak to the CRM and how that was developed? I saw that I believe it was proprietary.
trying to
I,
think of how. Go ahead.
I can. So, so at Faden, we have it's kind of a CRM. It's part of what its job is. At Faden, we have a SaaS product that is a loyalty product. It's like the back end engine for some loyalty brands. So you may not know you're using it, but you use it. It's the thing that actually adds points and subtracts points when you want to, get things. When you earn points and you can redeem them for a thing. And so it also keeps track of those customers' member data too, right? And a lot of technologies you're listing off support that product, right? So it uses things like SQL Server and Kubernetes and Elastic and other things that in the mix as part of like serving this product that then our customers ultimately consume, right? That's probably pretty generic, but it's also a fairly complicated piece of software, right? It's the primary thing that this group, like when Doug and Alex and Ricardo and Dylan are talking, they're primarily supporting that, keeping that application up and running, right? So when our partner or our customers or their partners want to call us for data or we send the data to them, that works correctly.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yep, absolutely. Um, would you say this is like a more of a back end position, or is it uh like a call center environment where there's metrics, first call resolution, service level agreement? If you could speak to that.
Yeah, the position is primarily around, your the most important piece of this will be the incident management portion of it. You are essentially the incident commander, and you're helping drive things forward and moving things forward. So it's, in that aspect of like call center and stuff like that, it's not necessarily per se to be a call center, but the clients that we support and stuff like that, if they raise issues, we're responding, or if there's alerts that come in preemptively, we're responding and adjusting those. So there's some other kind of not menial, but there's some other reporting and stuff like that that we'll work with and be doing. And obviously, the more technical knowledge and or familiar and closer that you get with the product, the more you'll understand it and how all the different components and stuff like that work together with it. And that'll be a part of the training to help bring you up to speed on how everything's working.
Okay. Yeah, I was gonna ask. You covered some of that. I was gonna ask the expectation of the first 3 to 6 months, 12 months, the learning curve of the position and upward mobility.
Yeah, so a lot of that is going to be, the first month or so is really going to be heavily invested in getting you up to speed with how everybody's working, bringing you up to speed about the product tally and how that all works together, all the different components, the workflows, getting you familiar with the different client teams, because each of the client teams will have their own specific people that are closer to the product, developers, operations folks, stuff like that. And we're overseeing a lot of those people. So it's a shared support model is what we kind of operate under. And so it'll be spent heavily getting you brought up to speed with that. After that, the next steps would be bringing you into the on-call rotation with Tier 1. That'll primarily be with Alex, and responding to the different alerts and stuff like that comes in, and engaging the different client teams and the people to help troubleshoot it. So, well, you don't necessarily need the technical expertise to be hands-on and fixing things, but having enough broad sense of the knowledge to be able to read the tea leaves, so to speak, and point to, hey, there's this particular component, there's this particular problem, this is who we need to engage, and being heavily focused on that portion of it. The other piece after that will be helping kind of develop root cause analysis and helping run the retroactives around that. So, the RCA for the client facing portion of it, but the retroactive, meeting that we'll do to help, bring people up to speed. What can we do better? Process improvement. And then Alex, I don't know if you want to speak a little bit more on kind of some of the other day-to-day tasks, since Alex is probably going to be your main counterpart here.
Sure. So the main thing that we do is we kind of we do a lot of monthly reporting. We do some um, tiny tasks that other people need. Like if something's going on in the monitoring system, we can go in there and make some tweaks or changes. I think of all the things I do. I mean, incident management is really the main thing that we kind of do. We keep up on. We could have multiple incidents that are open at one time, and we got to make sure all of them are progressing, and not just stalling out so that nothing happens. I mean, that's kind of the big picture of what I do.
Yeah. And the other thing I want to mention is you're not necessarily pigeonholed to that. So if there's something that in particular interests you and you want to kind of go after that and learn more about it, and if you can be somebody that's additive and can help jump in and fix things or move things forward, then, you're empowered to do so.
Okay. Okay. Um, So would you call this kind of somewhat? I seen something in the description that mentioned DevOps. This is pretty much like a DevOps environment, a DevOps position.
More of an operations position, not necessarily a DevOps. We'll work
Okay.
alongside DevOps because of they're heavily entwined. Just because hey, DevOps needs something from us, or we need something from DevOps, so we work pretty much hand in hand with them. We work hand in hand with just about everybody.
Okay. And what would you say? I think my final question is, what would you say is the direction of the company? What direction is the company going within the next 5 to 10 years?
Right now, the primary. No, I'll let
I
Joe
can answer
speak to
that.
that.
So I'd say traditionally we've um I'm looking to technology enable the business in lots of places, but in the area this job would be in, we've traditionally looked for few but large customers. Like our customer, we don't have a lot of customers, but they're very large customers. We're looking to push this product into more of a somewhere between a spectrum of you sign up once a decade to you can sign up with a credit card online. I'm not quite sure where we're going to end up on that spectrum, but we're pushing it more to apply to be approachable to a different type of consumer that might want to use our product, right? So the types of operational things we're focused on here, I think more and more important as the number of customers increases, because today our customers expect a lot of just concierge service, right? And what they do, and as the number of customers increases, we won't be able to kind of keep that up. So operational excellence and stability is really important to that process.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
It does. It does. I guess my last question, because I know you guys have a busy day. What would you say are the top 3 make or break qualifications in this position? And is there anything in my resume or experience that you think wouldn't be within that?
Communications, without a doubt, is probably going to be the most important thing that you have here. This is a heavily focused of collaborative nature with the amount of people that you're going to have to be working with, talking to, moving things forward, and just the diverse amount of people that you're going to be working with is where that'll be pretty effective in helping you move things forward. Having kind of the baseline understanding of monitoring and how to read and analyze data, tell how things are working, and being able to understand what's in front of you and who it is important to will be probably the other second most important thing for you to understand. So understanding who the stakeholders are and whether or not the information that you're providing is going to be useful to them. And then would say probably future oriented of things that are coming down the pipeline would be probably pretty so helpful. And I have to think a little bit more on the third one because I'm not quite. I don't know if that's the one I want to definitively land on, but that's probably somewhere around. I'll let somebody else chime in if they want to.
Okay.
All right, so that's all I think we've got. Do you got anything else, Derek, that you want to touch on quick? Otherwise, we'll wrap things up. And thank you very much for your time.
No, sir. I'm most obliged for all you gentlemen's time. I'm excited to move the conversation forward.
Sounds good. Thank you, sir.
Thank
We'll
you.
get back to you here in the next couple of days and we'll let you know how things are going.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Take
you,
care.
Derek.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.
Bye, guys.
All right. So you see, at the very end, I'm asking, is there anything that, you know, They didn't answer that last question. Is there anything in my resume or experience that you have heard that would disqualify me for this? So when you go back to the recruiter, if you're dealing with an agency, they'll say, "Oh, well, he wasn't this or he wasn't that." That's not what they said. So you always want to do that. So we'll get this loaded up, y'all.